My name is Liam Carter. I'm 26 and I spend my days staring at lines of code in a cramped office above a bike repair shop in downtown Denver. The startup I work for is small, just 5 of us crammed into a room with mismatched desks, a whiteboard covered in half-erased diagrams, and a coffee machine that gurgles like it's on its last breath. I'm a back-end developer, which means I fix bugs no one else wants to touch and make sure the app doesn't crash when too many people log in at once. It's not glamorous, but it pays the rent on my third-floor apartment in a brick building that's been around since the 70s. The stairs creak, the elevator's been broken for months, and the communal laundry room in the basement has a washer that eats socks like it's got a personal grudge. I don't mind, it's home. Most nights I come back around 7, kick off my shoes, and heat up whatever's left in the fridge. I'll scroll through my phone, answer a few Slack messages, maybe watch an episode of something I've already seen. My life's predictable, and I used to like it that way. There's comfort in routine, knowing exactly what comes next. No surprises. That was before Emma. Emma and I met at a coworker's birthday party last fall. She was the friend of a friend, standing by the bar with a glass of red wine, laughing at something someone said. She had this way of tilting her head when she listened, like every word mattered. We started talking, and 3 hours later, we were still there, the party thinning out around us. She was 25, worked in marketing, loved hiking, and bad horror movies. We clicked. Dates turned into weekends. Weekends turned into almost a year. I started picturing things I hadn't before. A future, maybe a dope bud, maybe a bigger place. When my mom called and asked if I was bringing anyone home for Christmas, I said yes without hesitating. Emma was thrilled. We booked train tickets to Vermont, where my parents live in a small town outside Burlington. I even bought us matching scarves, navy blue, soft wool, the kind of thing you see in catalogs and think, yeah, that's us. Then, a week before the trip, she ended it. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no slammed doors. We were on my couch, some takeout cooling between us, and she just said it. I need space, Liam. I'm not ready for this. This, like our whole year, was a single word she could push away. I asked why, but she didn't have an answer. Just apologies and a look that said she'd already checked out. I sat there staring at the train tickets on my phone, the scarves still in there wrapping on the table. She left, and the apartment felt bigger than it ever had. I didn't tell my parents. I couldn't. They'd been so excited. My mom kept texting about recipes she wanted to try. My dad asked if Emma liked gardening. The idea of calling them and saying, actually, I'm coming alone again, made my stomach twist. I've always been the reliable one, the kid who didn't cause trouble, who showed up on time and called on Sundays. Failing at this, bringing someone home, proving I wasn't just drifting through life, felt like letting them down in a way I couldn't explain. For days, I avoided the hallway outside my apartment. I didn't want to see anyone, didn't want to answer questions, but the building's small, and you can't avoid your neighbors forever. That's how I ran into Marin. She lives in 3A, right across the hall. I'd seen her around for months, always with a laptop under her arm, hair tied up in a messy bun, wearing oversized button-downs that look like they belong to someone else. She's 39, I think, though we've never talked ages. She's a freelance book editor, works from home, and keeps to herself. We'd nod in passing, maybe exchange a hey or a comment about the weather. That was it. She seemed nice enough, but we weren't friends, just two people sharing a wall. It was a Thursday evening, and I was dragging a bag of trash to the chute when I saw her in the hallway, wrestling with a potted plant that had tipped over. Dirt was spilled across the floor, and she was on her knees trying to scoop it back into the pot with her hands. Her shirt was smudged, her hair falling out of its tie. She looked up when I stepped closer. Need a hand? I asked. She glanced at me, then at the mess. Unless you've got a vacuum, I'm good. I laughed, more out of nerves than anything. I set my trash down and crouched to help. We worked in silence for a minute, piling dirt back into the pot. Her hands moved fast, precise, like she was used to fixing things on her own. When we finished, she stood, brushed her palms on her jeans, and gave me a small smile. Thanks, Liam. I nodded, surprised she knew my name. I was about to head back inside when the words just came out. I don't know why. Maybe it was the tickets burning a hole in my pocket, or the scarves sitting on my table, or the way she looked at me like she wasn't in a hurry to leave. Marin, this is going to sound insane, but can you do me a favor? She raised an eyebrow, leaning against the wall. Define insane. I took a breath. My parents think I'm bringing my girlfriend home for Christmas. She dumped me last week. I don't want to show up alone and explain it. Would you pretend to be her just for the trip? One weekend. She didn't laugh, didn't flinch, just studied me for a long second, her eyes sharp but not unkind. I expected her to say no, to call me crazy and walk away. Instead, she tilted her head. Just one trip? Yeah, train leaves Friday night, back Monday. You just be Emma for a couple days? She crossed her arms, considering. I don't do ditzy. If I'm in, I play it my way. I blinked. You're saying yes? Don't make me regret it, she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. We'll need a story and ground rules. I stood there, stunned, as she picked up the plant and headed to her door. She paused, glanced back. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Bring coffee, black, no sugar. We'll start planning. The door clicked shut behind her, and I was left in the hallway, trash bag still in my hand, wondering what the hell I'd just done. Friday night came faster than I expected. I stood outside Marin's door at 6:32, paper cups of black coffee in a cardboard carrier, my backpack slung over one shoulder. I'd spent the afternoon packing and repacking, swapping out shirts like any of them could make this less insane. Marin opened the door in a navy peacoat, hair in its usual loose bun, a small leather duffel at her feet. She took the coffee without a word, sipped, and nodded approval. Union Station in 40, she said. Let's move. The walk to the light rail stop was quiet. Snow had started to fall, light, dry flakes that melted the second they hit the sidewalk. I kept glancing at her, waiting for some sign she was second-guessing. But she just walked, boots crunching, like we did this every day. On the train to the station, she pulled out her phone and opened a note titled Liam plus Emma Origin Story. Coffee shop on Pearl Street, she read aloud. You spilled a latte on my manuscript. I called you a clumsy coder. You offered to buy me dinner to make up for it. Sound familiar? I snorted. I've never spilled anything on anyone. Details, she said, typing. We'll say it was a rainy Tuesday. You were in a rush. I was annoyed but charmed. Classic meet cute. We boarded the California Zephyr just after 8. The sleeper car was small, 2 seats facing each other, a narrow aisle, a curtain that pulled across for the night. I stowed our bags while Marin claimed the window. The train lurched out of Denver, city lights smearing into streaks of gold and red. She kicked off her boots, tucked her legs under her, and opened the note again. Favorites, she said. Go. I rattled off what I knew about Emma. Hiking, Thai food, the office reruns. Marin typed, then looked up. And me? You drink black coffee, edit books, hate small talk. That's about it. She smirked. We'll improvise. For the first hour, we ran lines like actors cramming for opening night. I told her about my dad's tomato plants, how he talks to them like they're old friends, about my mom's romance novels, stacked 3 deep on every surface. Marin listened, asked questions, made notes. She told me her ex-husband hated trains, said they were inefficient. I filed that away, unsure why it mattered. Somewhere past Grand Junction, the car attendant dimmed the lights. We pulled the curtain, converted the seats into bunks. I took the top, Marin the bottom. The train rocked gently, a steady metallic hum underneath everything. I stared at the ceiling, inches from my face, listening to her shift below. You awake? She whispered after a while. Yeah. Tell me something real. I hesitated. Like what? Something Emma never knew. The darkness made it easier. When I was 12, I broke my arm falling off my bike. My dad carried me 3 miles home because the car wouldn't start. I cried the whole way. He didn't say a word, just kept walking. I still think about that when I'm stuck. Silence, then the rustle of sheets. My mom left when I was 9, she said. Didn't say goodbye. Just a note on the fridge. I kept it for years, burned it when I turned 30. Didn't feel as free as I thought it would. I didn't know what to say. The train clicked over a junction, and for a moment the space between us felt smaller than the bunk. "Night, Marin," I said. "Night, Liam." I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, the curtain was sliding back, and pale morning light leaked in. Marin was already up, hair loose, wearing an oversized sweater. She handed me a paper cup. Coffee, black, still hot. "Thought you'd need this," she said. "We're an hour out." I sat up, took the cup. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us moved away. We spent the last stretch rehearsing again, but it felt different and less like lines, more like memories we were borrowing. She practiced my mom's name, Susan, rolling it around like she'd known her for years. I taught her how to pronounce Vermont the way locals do, soft on the T. When the train pulled into Essex Junction, snow blanketing the platform, we grabbed our bags and stepped off together. She slipped her arm through mine without asking. "Showtime," she murmured. But as we walked toward the parking lot where my dad waited, her grip tightened just enough to feel real. Dad's old Subaru was idling at the curb, exhaust curling into the frigid air. He stepped out when he saw us, gray beard dusted with the snow, wearing the same flannel he had had since I was in high school. His eyes went from me to Marin, then back to me, a flicker of surprise he tried to hide behind a nod. "Liam." He pulled me into a quick, hard hug, the kind that smelled like pine and engine grease. "Good trip?" "Long," I said. "This is Marin." She extended a gloved hand. "Nice to finally meet you, Mr. Carter." "Call me Tom," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "Susan's got chili on. Let's get you out of the cold." The drive to the house took 20 minutes on winding back roads, snowbanks high on either side. Marin sat in the back, quiet, watching the scenery. Dad asked the usual questions, how the train was, if we needed anything from town. I answered on autopilot, my stomach knotting tighter with every mile. When we pulled into the driveway, the porch light was on, and Mom was already at the door, apron tied over a sweater, arms open before I'd even shut the car door. "My boy," she said, squeezing me until I couldn't breathe. Then she turned to Marin, eyes soft. "And you must be the one who's been keeping him out of trouble." Marin smiled, warm but measured. "Someone has to." Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and wood smoke. The Christmas tree stood in the corner, half decorated, lights blinking lazily. Mom hustled us out of our coats, talking a mile a minute, how the neighbor's goat got loose again, how Dad insisted on real candles this year. Marin listened, nodding in all the right places, her coat draped over her arm like she belonged. We dropped our bags in the guest room. 2 twin beds, a quilt my grandmother made, a window overlooking the backyard. Marin set her duffel down, ran a hand over the quilt. "Cozy," she said. I couldn't tell if she meant it. Dinner was chili and cornbread, steam rising from the bowls on the oak table that had seen every holiday since I was a kid. Dad said grace, short and gruff. Mom passed the sour cream. Conversation started safe. Weather, the train, Denver traffic. Then Mom leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes on Marin. "So," she said, "how did you two meet?" Marin didn't miss a beat. "Coffee shop on Pearl Street. He spilled a latte on my manuscript. I called him a clumsy coder. He bought me dinner to apologize." Dad chuckled. "Sounds like Liam." I forced a laugh, spooning chili I barely tasted. Marin's knee brushed mine under the table. "Accidental, maybe. Or not." Mom wasn't done. "And you're a book editor. Freelance?" Marin nodded. "Mostly literary fiction, some memoir. I like stories that don't lie." Dad raised an eyebrow. "Honest stories. Rare these days." The questions kept coming. Where Marin grew up, Connecticut, if she skied, not since college, what she thought of Vermont, so far, quiet in a good way. She answered effortlessly, weaving in details we'd rehearsed but adding small truths I hadn't expected. She mentioned her mother's rosemary bread, how it never rose right in humid summers. She asked Dad about his tomatoes, listened like she actually cared when he explained heirloom varieties. I watched her across the table, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the way she smiled at Mom's stories without overdoing it. She wasn't acting. Not really. She was just Marin in a different house with different people, fitting in like she'd been coming here for years. Then Mom set her spoon down. "So," she said, voice softer now, "are you two serious?" The room went still. Dad looked at his bowl. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Marin placed her spoon beside her plate, deliberate. "If I weren't serious," she said, "I wouldn't have sat through a 6-hour train ride just to eat chili in Vermont." Mom's eyes widened, then softened. She reached across the table, squeezed Marin's hand. "That's a good answer." I stared at my chili, heart hammering. Marin's foot nudged mine again, this time definitely not accidental. After dinner, we helped clear the table. Marin washed, I dried. Mom hovered with dish towels and questions about Denver rent prices. Dad disappeared to the garage, probably to tinker with something that didn't need tinkering. When the dishes were done, Mom pulled Marin into the living room to show her the romance novels she'd stacked by the fireplace. I lingered in the kitchen, listening to their voices, Mom's laugh, Marin's low murmur in response. Later in the guest room, I sat on the edge of my bed, unlacing my boots. Marin closed the door softly, leaned against it. "Your mom's sweet," she said. "She likes you. She likes the idea of you." She crossed the room, sat on her bed. "You okay?" I nodded, then shook my head. "I don't know. This feels too easy." She considered that. "Easy isn't the same as fake." I looked at her, then really looked. The overhead light cast shadows under her eyes, but they were bright, alive. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't guarded either. For the first time since we'd left Denver, the space between us felt like it belonged to both of us. "Tomorrow," she said, "we'll get through the day, then we go home, and we figure out what this was." I nodded. "Yeah." She stood, pulled a sleep shirt from her bag, disappeared into the bathroom. I lay back on the quilt, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle, the creak of old wood, the tick of the radiator, the faint murmur of Mom's voice downstairs. Marin came back, hair down, face scrubbed clean. She climbed into her bed without a word. The lights clicked off. Snow tapped the window. I listened to her breathing even out, slow and steady. My own heart wouldn't settle. I wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in weeks, I wasn't dreading it. The next morning smelled like coffee and pine. I woke to the sound of Marin moving quietly around the room, folding her sweater, slipping on socks. Sunlight filtered through the frost-laced window, painting stripes across the quilt. She glanced over when I sat up. "Morning," she whispered. "Your mom's already up." Something about cinnamon rolls. I groaned, paused to rubbing my face. "She'll feed us until we can't move." Marin smiled, small, real. "I'm not complaining." Downstairs, the kitchen was warm, the oven ticking as it preheated. Mom was rolling dough on the counter, flour dusting her apron. Dad sat at the table with the newspaper, glasses perched on his nose. He looked up when we entered. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Like a rock," Marin said, sliding into a chair. She accepted a mug from Mom without hesitation. I watched her wrap both hands around it, the way she always did with coffee. Mom noticed too, and something passed across her face. Approval, maybe. Breakfast was quiet chaos. Cinnamon rolls, scrambled eggs, bacon crisping in the pan. Marin helped set the table, asked Dad about his guitar leaning in the corner. He lit up, launched into a story about the first time he played Blackbird for Mom on their third date. Marin listened, chin in her hand, like she'd known them forever. After we ate, Dad suggested a walk to the pond before the snow got too deep. We bundled up, Marin in my old high school jacket, sleeves too long, and trudged through the backyard. The air was sharp, the kind that stings your lungs. Snow crunched under our boots. Dad pointed out the garden beds buried under white, told Marin how he'd expand the tomatoes next spring. She nodded, asked about soil pH, and I swear he looked at her like she'd just spoken his language. By afternoon, the sky darkened, clouds rolling in heavy and gray. We were in the living room, Mom stringing lights on the tree, Dad tuning his guitar when the first drops hit the window. Within minutes, it was a downpour, rain mixing with sleet, drumming the roof like fingers on a table. "Storm's early," Dad muttered, strumming a chord. "Might lose power." Mom lit candles, just in case. Marin curled up on the couch with a blanket, watching the flames dance in the fireplace. I brought her tea, Earl Grey, 2 sugars, the way she'd mentioned on the train. She took it, surprised. You remembered? I pay attention. Dad started playing slow, familiar notes. Blackbird, then House of the Rising Sun. The room filled with sound, warm and low. Marin's eyes fluttered shut. I sat on the arm of the couch close enough to feel the heat from her shoulder. When he finished, Mom clapped softly. Play one more, Tom. He switched to something softer, a melody I didn't recognize. Marin opened her eyes, looked at me. Your mom really wants me to be your girlfriend, she said, voice low, so only I could hear. I swallowed. And you? She didn't answer right away. Rain lashed the windows. Dad's fingers moved over the strings, steady and sure. It's easier than I thought, she said finally. And scarier. I shifted, the couch creaking. Scarier how? She pulled the blanket tighter. Because I'm not acting. Not all of it. The music stopped. Dad set the guitar down, stretched. I'm turning in, storm's not letting up. Mom followed, kissing my cheek, squeezing Marin's shoulder. You two get some rest. The house went quiet, just the rain, the crackle of the fire, the tick of the old clock on the mantel. Marin stood, walked to the window. I followed. Outside, the world was blurred, trees bending, snow melting into slush. She hugged her arms. Being good isn't what scares women, she said, not turning. Being real is. I stepped closer. I'm not good at real. She faced me then. You asked a stranger to lie for you. That's pretty real. I laughed, short and surprised. Touché. Silence stretched. The fire popped. She reached out, brushed a flake of snow from my sleeve, pointless. But the gesture lingered. I like your parents, she said. I like this. This, she gestured vaguely. The room, the storm, us, the quiet, the way your dad talks to his plants, the way your mom looks at you like you're still 10. I nodded, throat tight. I don't want to go back to pretending tomorrow. She met my eyes. Then don't. The rain slowed to a drizzle. We stood there, inches apart, the space between us thinner than the window pane. I wanted to say more, something about how her laugh on the train had caught me off guard, how her hand on my arm in the snow felt like an anchor. But the words stuck. Instead, I reached for the blanket she'd left on the couch, draped it over her shoulders. She didn't move away. Night, Marin. Night, Liam. I climbed the stairs slowly, the old wood creaking under my weight. In the guest room, I lay on my bed, listening to the storm fade, to the house settle, to the faint sound of Marin moving below. My heart wouldn't slow. I wasn't sure if it was the lie ending or something else beginning. Morning came too soon. The storm had passed, leaving a thin layer of ice on the windows and a hush over the house. I woke to the smell of coffee and the soft clink of dishes downstairs. Marin was already up, her bed made, duffel zipped. She stood by the window, watching the backyard glitter under weak sunlight. Ready? She asked when I appeared in the doorway. I nodded, though I wasn't. Breakfast was quick. Leftover cinnamon rolls, scrambled eggs. Mom fussing over seconds. She hugged Marin longer than necessary, whispering something that made Marin's eyes glisten. Dad shook my hand, then Marin's, his grip firm. Take care of him, he said. Marin smiled. I'll try. The drive to the station was quiet. Dad hummed along to the radio, snow tires crunching. Mom pressed a Tupperware of cookies into Marin's hands. For the ride, she said. Another hug, another whisper. Then the train pulled in and we boarded. The return trip felt different. No rehearsing, no notes. We sat side by side, staring out at the passing hills. I pretended to sleep, but really I was listening. Her breathing, the rustle of her coat, the occasional turn of a page in the book she'd pulled from her bag. When we changed trains in Chicago, she bought us sandwiches. We ate in silence, the kind that doesn't need filling. Denver arrived under a gray afternoon sky. The station was crowded, voices echoing off concrete. We grabbed our bags, stepped onto the platform. The air smelled like diesel and wet pavement. Marin paused at the exit, turned to me. If someone asked tomorrow, she said, what am I to you? I looked at her, hair loose from the trip, eyes tired but clear. The question hung between us, heavier than any line we'd practiced. The person I don't want to pretend with anymore, I said. She studied me for a long second, then smiled. Not the polite one, not the rehearsed one, a real one, small and certain. Come on, she said, starting toward the taxi stand. I'll make coffee. Back at the building, the stairs creaked the same as always. She unlocked 3A, held the door open. I stepped inside. The apartment was warm, books stacked on every surface, a half-finished mug on the table. She dropped her bag, kicked off her boots. No acting today, she said, echoing something she'd once told me in passing. I set the Tupperware on the counter. Tomorrow? She poured water into the kettle, didn't look up. We'll see. Days blurred. I started bringing breakfast. Peanut butter toast, cut diagonally the way she liked. She'd open the door a crack, take the plate, leave it on the counter with a nod. Some mornings she'd already be up, laptop glowing, hair in a messy knot. She'd wave me in without a word. One Saturday I knocked and got no answer. My phone buzzed. Doors open. Come in. I pushed inside. She was on the couch, legs tucked under her, a book open on her lap. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, dust motes drifting. She didn't stand. Sit, she said. I did on the opposite end. The silence was easy. She closed the book, set it aside. This time, she said, nothing's fake. I nodded. I know. She reached over, took my hand. Her fingers were warm, steady. We didn't speak. Didn't need to. Outside, traffic hummed on Colfax. Inside, the kettle clicked off. She stood, pulled me up. Coffee? She asked. Always. We moved around each other in the small kitchen, her pouring, me grabbing mugs. She handed me one. Black, no sugar. I took a sip. Good? Perfect. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Your mom texted, wants to know if I'm coming for Easter. I raised an eyebrow. What did you say? That I'd think about it. She paused. With you? I set the mug down. Marin, I'm not asking for promises. She smiled, the same one from the platform. Just mornings like this, no scripts. I stepped closer. I can do that. She opened a drawer, pulled out a key, held it out. For when you forget yours, she said, or when you don't want to knock. I took it. The metal was cool, real. I slipped it onto my key ring right next to the one from my apartment. We didn't kiss. Didn't need to. Not yet. We just stood there, coffee cooling, the space between us, finally, truly ours. Some stories don't end with fireworks. They end with a key, a mug, a quiet morning where no one's acting. And sometimes that's more than enough. In the creaky stairwells of a Denver apartment, in the snow-dusted warmth of a Vermont Christmas, Liam and Marin's story unveils a powerful lesson. Sometimes the masks we wear to shield our hearts lead us to unexpected truths. Liam, reeling from a breakup, asked Marin, his reserved neighbor, to play his girlfriend for a weekend to avoid disappointing his parents. What began as a rehearsed charade, complete with a fabricated meet-cute and borrowed scarves, unraveled into something raw and real. Marin's quiet strength, her effortless blend of fiction and honesty at the dinner table, and her vulnerable confession by the firelight showed Liam that authenticity grows in the spaces where pretense falls away. Their journey from a stage train ride to shared silences in a key slipped on to a ring teaches us that life's deepest connections often start with a leap, sometimes a reckless one, and thrive in the courage to stop acting. In a world that pressures us to perform, Liam and Marin remind us to embrace the messy, unscripted moments, a spilled plant, a shared coffee, a hand held in a storm. Love isn't found in perfection, but in the quiet choice to be real, to show up without a script. Let this story tug at your heart. Have you ever found truth in a moment you meant to fake? Share your experience in the comments. I'm eager to hear how authenticity has shaped your path. If tales of unexpected love and quiet bravery move you, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and join our community. Let's keep celebrating the moments that make us whole, one honest story at a time.